Everyone was clapping for my sister's generosity until I stood up and said, "That money? IT was me. I've been supporting this family for 3 years." Hey there, and welcome to today's story. Wherever you are, maybe you're commuting, cooking dinner, or just winding down, I hope you're ready to pause for a few minutes and really feel this one. Because today we're diving into the story of someone who gave everything for her family and still felt unseen. Have you ever been the one who holds it all together while no one even notices you're there? Well, Riley has. And what she does next might just surprise you. Stick around until the end to see how she finally stood up for herself, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see a little bit of your own journey in hers. And hey, if these stories speak to you, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's the best way to keep this channel growing and bring even more powerful, real-life stories your way. Thanks for being here. Let's begin.
My name is Riley Hayes, and if there's one thing I've learned from spending countless nights scrolling through Reddit threads like r/AmITheAsshole and r/Raised by Narcissists, it's that family dynamics are rarely straightforward. At 27, sitting alone in my tiny apartment in Portland, Oregon, I often wondered when exactly I became invisible in my own family. Not invisible in the superhero sense, but more like someone whose presence just never seemed to matter. My younger sister, Harper, was the kind of girl you'd find on a magazine cover or trending TikTok video. Charismatic, pretty, effortlessly charming, she drew people toward her like bees to honey. My parents, Evelyn and Grant Hayes, practically worshipped the ground she walked on. Growing up, Harper was always the creative one, praised endlessly for her watercolors and guitar covers, while I became the responsible one, a label that stuck like an unwanted tattoo. The ironic thing is, as much as I was ignored at home, online I found comfort in anonymous camaraderie. Reddit became my second home, full of strangers whose stories made me feel a bit less alone. I'd post anonymously about feeling overshadowed, and strangers from around the world validated me more than my own family ever did. I had always imagined adulthood would bring clarity or at least some acknowledgement of my efforts. But the reality was starkly different. After graduation, Harper moved back home to find her artistic voice, while I embraced the practical path, securing an entry-level role at an advertising agency in downtown Portland. The firm was small, nestled between vintage bookstores and quirky coffee shops. Exactly what you'd picture from a Pacific Northwest cliché. It was stable, practical, and utterly forgettable. Every morning, I'd board the Max train, earbuds firmly in place, silently absorbing motivational podcasts, or sometimes just the comforting drone of a stranger's playlist. Reddit became my constant companion during these commutes. Threads like r/personal finance and r/frugal became my daily devotionals, guiding me as I navigated the precarious world of budgeting on a thin salary burdened by student loan repayments. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was precisely controlled, down to every penny. One evening, as I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment scrolling through Reddit, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. It was a picture of Harper holding a freshly painted canvas with a caption proudly declaring, "Your sister just sold a painting online. She insists on helping us pay the mortgage this month." We're so lucky. My stomach nodded sharply. The painting sale may be true. The mortgage payment, however, that was all me. The previous night, after noticing the overdue bills piled on the kitchen counter during my rare visit home, I'd quietly transferred enough from my savings to cover 2 months' mortgage payments. The gratitude, though, had drifted neatly into Harper's hands, a familiar place it seemed to settle. In response, I simply replied, "That's great." Proud of her, deleting and retyping it multiple times before pressing send. I buried the ache deep, under layers of acceptance that felt as heavy as concrete. The deeper I fell into this invisible role, the more I leaned into anonymous forums. Redditor stories became my support system, their experiences mirroring mine in oddly comforting ways. One late night, reading a thread titled, have you ever felt invisible to your family? I broke down in tears. Comment after comment resonated so strongly it felt like these strangers knew my life better than the people who'd raised me. At work, I buried myself deeper into projects, becoming the reliable team member who always delivered quietly and efficiently. My boss, Andrea, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who survived on black coffee and sheer determination, began to notice. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling campaign presentation, she pulled me aside. "Riley, you're carrying a lot of weight here. It doesn't go unnoticed." I smiled politely but couldn't suppress the bitter thought. Funny how my boss sees what my family never does. When I returned to my cubicle, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. This time a link to Harper's latest Instagram post. Harper was smiling effortlessly at a trendy Portland cafe, captioning her life as an artist supported purely by her passion. It stung worse than usual. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. "You chose this," I whispered quietly to myself. "You chose to support them silently." But the words felt hollow, echoing in my head as I boarded the crowded train home, more invisible than ever. The tension that had quietly simmered beneath the surface began to bubble over more openly around the holidays. Christmas had always been Harper's stage. She reveled in the twinkling lights, festive decorations, and, most notably, the spotlight. This year, though, was different. My secret financial support had increased significantly. I'd been transferring larger sums regularly as Dad's plumbing contracts became fewer and Mom's Etsy jewelry shop dwindled in popularity. But as my contributions grew, so did my invisibility. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my parents' home, holding a modest bag containing gifts I'd meticulously chosen. A handmade scarf for Mom from a local artisan I'd discovered on Reddit's r/Portland community, an antique watch for Dad I'd bargained for at a thrift store, and a set of artist-grade oil pastels for Harper that cost me 2 weeks of skipping lunch. Harper, however, stole the spotlight effortlessly. Her gift to my parents was revealed dramatically, a beautifully designed mock-up certificate announcing she'd paid the upcoming 3 months of their mortgage payments through profits from her recent art commissions. My parents erupted in joyous applause. Dad, teary-eyed, embraced Harper tightly. Mom showered her with praises loud enough for our neighbors to hear. My heart raced uncomfortably, beating louder with each moment. "That's amazing, Harper," I managed weakly, my voice trembling slightly. Harper looked briefly uncomfortable, shifting her gaze downward. But she quickly regained her confidence. "You know, I do what I can," she said modestly, offering an apologetic smile in my direction. I realized instantly she knew. She had to. The mortgage payments she claimed she'd made perfectly matched my anonymous transfers. Yet, she'd allowed the lie to flourish, allowing herself to bask in false admiration. Later that evening, feeling suffocated, I slipped outside onto our porch. The night was cool, the sky clear, studded with stars unusually bright for Portland winters. My phone buzzed softly. It was Mason. "Merry Christmas, Riley. Hope your family's finally seeing how amazing you are." The irony made me choke back tears. When I went back inside, Harper was holding court, talking vividly about the struggles of the modern artist, how sacrificing stability was necessary for true creativity. My parents nodded in awe, hanging on her every word. "We admire your courage," Dad said earnestly. "Not many people your age would be selfless enough to sacrifice their comfort for family." The hypocrisy became too much. Unable to bear it, I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, struggling to steady my breathing. In the mirror, my reflection stared back, worn and frustrated. "You're enabling this," my internal voice scolded, sounding suspiciously like countless Reddit commenters I'd advised myself. Days later, Harper visited my apartment unexpectedly. Without her usual confidence, she seemed genuinely troubled. "Riley, She began hesitantly, I know you're upset. I waited silently, heart pounding. She continued, choosing her words carefully. Look, I appreciate what you're doing, really. But Mom and Dad, they expect this from me now. You have a good job, stability. I have this. She gestured vaguely at her thrifted clothes, artistically messy hair, and her permanently paint-stained fingertips. If they found out the truth, they'd be devastated. I stared at her, incredulous. You want me to stay invisible forever? Harper's eyes filled with tears. No, just until I can really stand on my own. Please. My chest tightened. And when exactly will that be? She had no answer. That night, sleepless and restless, I poured my heart anonymously into a lengthy Reddit post on r/family drama, detailing every painful nuance. Hundreds responded, many urging me to confront my family, to reclaim my visibility. Yet, despite their encouragement, fear and guilt kept me silent. My sacrifices were invisible threads holding our family together, and cutting them terrified me more than living unseen. But deep down, I knew something had to change. For the first time, I allowed myself to question whether keeping this illusion alive was kindness or cowardice. As I drifted into uneasy sleep, Reddit notifications blinking softly on my phone beside me, I wondered how much longer my invisible threads could hold before they inevitably snapped. If you've ever spent enough time on Reddit forums like r/raised by narcissists or r/family drama, you know every painful family story inevitably has a tipping point. For me, that point came crashing down on Harper's lavish 24th birthday, a grandiose event staged like a gallery opening, complete with catered appetizers, artisan cocktails, and soft jazz drifting through our parents' beautifully landscaped backyard. The lights glittered across the canopy of trees, the setting picturesque enough for Harper's social media followers to envy. I stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching a carefully chosen gift, a framed childhood photo of the two of us laughing on a summer vacation. It was modest compared to the gleaming packages and professionally wrapped gifts piled high beside the pool, but it carried an emotional weight only I seemed to understand. I'd spent days agonizing over the perfect gift, finally settling on sentiment over extravagance. Dad stepped forward theatrically, holding a cocktail in one hand, announcing dramatically, "Time for gifts." And we already know Harper has spoiled us rotten this year. A polite laughter echoed as Harper unwrapped gift after gift, designer dresses, expensive paints, and sleek gadgets she'd casually hinted at on her Instagram stories. When she finally reached mine, she hesitated briefly, perhaps sensing its simplicity, and tore the paper slowly. As she revealed the modest wooden frame, murmurs filled the yard. Dad, perhaps emboldened by too many cocktails, snorted dismissively, "Well, Harper gives US months of mortgage payments." And Riley, a thrift store souvenir. The world stopped. My face flushed, embarrassment morphing quickly into deep-rooted hurt. All eyes, some sympathetic, many judgmental, swung in my direction. My throat tightened, chest aching, and suddenly the invisible threads binding me snapped. That mortgage? That support? I blurted out, voice trembling yet defiant. That was me. All of it. Harper never paid a single cent. A heavy silence pressed down. The music felt absurd now, out of place. My mother's eyes narrowed, her voice cold and accusatory. "Riley, how could you make up such a hurtful lie at your sister's party? Haven't we taught you anything about jealousy?" A ripple of whispers ran through the crowd. Harper stood frozen, eyes wide, mouth opening as if to speak, but no words escaped. My pulse pounded loudly in my ears, tears hot on my cheeks. "Riley," Dad started, stepping toward me, visibly angry. "This isn't the time or place for attention-seeking." "I can prove it," I said desperately, pulling out my phone. "I can show you every transfer, every payment." It was never Harper. It was always me. "Stop," Harper finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper, avoiding my gaze. "Riley, please, don't do this." My parents turned sharply to Harper, confused. "Do you know what she's talking about?" Mom demanded. Harper looked at the ground, shaking her head, unable or unwilling to speak the truth. Anger, embarrassment, betrayal, it all surged at once. Without another word, I dropped the gift onto a nearby table and fled. As I walked through the front yard to my car, the murmurs behind me grew louder, feeding the ache in my chest. I drove aimlessly through the dark streets of Portland, unable to shake the sense that I'd just shattered a family illusion that had lasted far too long. The aftermath felt surreal. I spent the first week isolated, haunted by unanswered texts and missed calls from my family. Messages ranged from worried to furious, each notification causing a sharp twist in my stomach. Reddit threads became my sanctuary, anonymously recounting the entire ordeal on r/relationship_advice, seeking validation that I wasn't losing my sanity. Comments poured in. Supportive strangers confirming I'd done the right thing. Their virtual backing bolstered me enough to finally open the floodgates to Mason one quiet evening in his apartment. He listened patiently, nodding softly. When I finished, my voice hoarse and tired, he took my hand gently. "Riley, it was brave to speak up. Now you have to let yourself heal." And so I did. Without the burden of secretly supporting my family, I began rebuilding myself. Money previously sent home now stayed safely in my account. Small luxuries felt huge. I treated myself to take out from restaurants I'd bookmarked months ago on r/Portland Foodie. I bought books, signed up for classes in graphic design, inspired by threads on r/design, and even began exercising again, reconnecting with myself physically and emotionally. My world gradually brightened as my self-worth slowly restored itself. Yet, I couldn't help occasionally peeking into Harper's social media accounts. Her posts were suddenly fewer, her lavish outings replaced by earnest attempts to sell her artwork. The extravagant lifestyle she once flaunted online now appeared subdued and uncertain. One afternoon, while browsing Reddit on my lunch break, a familiar name caught my attention on r/localartistspdx. Harper had posted desperately seeking advice on securing commissions quickly, bills mounting, reality pressing hard. For a moment, pity flickered inside me, but bitterness quickly followed. I closed the app, conflicted yet resolute. She needed to grow on her own. Weeks passed, and I finally received a tentative text from Harper. "Can we talk?" Just us. We met in a quiet coffee shop, the air thick with tension. Harper, visibly humbled, played nervously with a napkin. "Riley," she began quietly, unable to meet my eyes at first. "I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish. I knew what you were doing, but I got swept up in everyone's approval. I let them believe the lie because it felt good." "I know," I whispered softly, voice heavy but firm. "But it cost me years of invisibility. It cost me myself." She nodded solemnly, tears welling. "I'm going to make it right," she said earnestly. "I don't know how yet, but I promise." Her sincerity surprised me. The Harper in front of me was raw, vulnerable, finally stripped of her charming facade. "Maybe you start," I suggested gently, "by finally standing on your own. Not just for mom and dad's approval, but for yourself." She left with quiet resolve. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it felt like progress. A few days later, my phone lit up, mom's number appearing on the screen. Heart pounding, I answered cautiously. Mom's voice cracked immediately, softer than I'd ever heard. "Riley, we saw everything. Harper told us the truth. Can we please see you?" A strange calm washed over me. "I'll think about it," I said simply, proud of the steadiness in my voice. Ending the call, relief filled me more powerfully than anger or vindication ever had. Finally, the invisibility had ended. I'd been seen clearly. Perhaps for the first time ever. That evening, Sitting quietly beside Mason as he scrolled mindlessly through Reddit on his phone, I smiled to myself. The threads I'd followed obsessively, the anonymous community that had supported me, had somehow guided me to find my voice. Though rebuilding trust would take time, I knew now what it meant to be visible, to stand firmly in my truth. For the first time in memory, I felt truly seen by Mason, by strangers on Reddit who understood the pain of invisibility, and most importantly, finally, by myself. 6 months later, an invitation arrived, an awkward attempt at reconciliation. Reluctantly, I attended. The family dinner felt staged at first, until Harper unexpectedly broke the tension. "It was Riley," she said quietly. "It was always Riley. She's the reason we survived." My parents looked at me, genuinely remorseful. "We were blind," Riley, Mom admitted softly. Dad nodded slowly, embarrassed yet sincere. I finally saw in their eyes the recognition I'd longed for my entire life. This time, I made it clear boundaries would remain firm. "I'll support you emotionally," I told them firmly, "but my worth isn't tied to my financial contribution." We started rebuilding, awkwardly but honestly. Mason stood by me through it all, joking later that our drama could easily go viral on r/relationships. Through this journey, I learned a valuable truth that resonated deeply from my Reddit days. Self-worth isn't about what you sacrifice silently, it's about how loudly you're willing to stand up for yourself.
And now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Or had to reclaim your voice in the most unexpected way? Share your thoughts, stories, or even just a me too down in the comments. I read every single one. Speech Balloon. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And of course, subscribe if you want more real-life stories that go beyond the surface and straight to the heart. Thank you, truly, for staying with me through every word. I'll see you in the next story.